Hello, welcome to this video. And today on this video, I want to have a look at the 1970 album by Traffic, the John Barleycorn Must Die, which is coming up to 56th anniversary of its release this month, end of the month, in July 1970. So previously we looked at the Eric Clapton, John Mayall's Blues Breakers album, its 60th release. So I like these birthdays. I like these anniversaries of albums as well. I think there's a little bit of music history in these things, and it also brings them up, looking at their legacy and relevance in the present day, and also sort of helps to keep them alive. So John Barleycorn Must Die is sort of one of my favourite Traffic records. It's really when they really find themselves, I think. And sets the tone for the sort of 70s recordings as well. And sort of their most earthy elements are contained in this record. So, and it's had many plaudits over the years. I mean, back in the Mojo in 2000, the greatest albums of all time, considered it a magnificent album that was a remarkable showcase for their gifts. And it's true. It's the fourth record. So Winwood folds Traffic, formed in 66, 67, and moved out. One of the first band really in Britain to get it together, and then one of the first bands to get it together in the countryside, as it were, with a cottage that they had down in Aston Tyrol in Berkshire. And of course, he folds it in 69 to form Blind Faith with Ginger Baker and Eric Clapton and Rick Gretsch family. When that sort of runs out of steam, the tour that follows in 1969, Clapton pulls out and they don't, it just doesn't carry on. The idea is mooted by Ireland that Winwood would make his own solo record. I think initially it was to be called Mad Shadows, but it didn't work. He wasn't happy, didn't enjoy that process, so he brought back in Chris Wood from Traffic, who played flute and saxophones, and Jim Capaldi, who played drums, to make the record that ultimately became John Barleycorn. And what's so interesting in this is that I think they really tap into a sort of rural British folk um, idea, but also bringing in Winwood's love of soul and Motown and R&B grooves, and combining the two together. This sort of, I refer to it as this sort of folk funk idea. And there's a third element really as well in it. Is this sort of loose jazzy jam vibe. We've got Chris Wood's saxophone and Winwood's keys, keyboard work, his piano really rolling through. This Capaldi still playing drums at the time. Later on, he'd give that over to Jim Gordon, and then later Roger Hawkins play would play drums as he sort of lost his confidence in. But he's got a great, he's most technically able with drums, but it's an absolutely great feel to it. And it really is writ large in this record. It's the vibes, as it were, are excellent. And there's a sort of pull that, that they were very popular when they went to America with the Grateful Dead. Um, there's an element of that into it that doesn't get as far out as the Dead does. There's a jamming vibe, and this bond between Traffic and the Dead sort of continues. When Traffic reformed in 1994, they support the Dead on the California leg of their summer tour, and Garcia comes out and plays with them, etc. So there's that association there. And in that year, in '94, when Traffic reformed, there were loads of tracks from John Barleycorn played live. You got that really irresistible opener of "Be Glad," the piano-led, sort of groovy, very British instrumental that goes straight into like psychedelic imagery of Freedom Rider, and then Empty Pages. It's just irresistible run of side one. And side two, which they did this really well live as well, is the title track, drawn from a traditional song that Chris Wood had brought in after listening to an album by the Watersons, a cappella British folk club group called Frost and Fire. And they adapted themselves. It's based the actual folk songs based on the Passion of the Corn. It's parallel with the Passion of the Christ and the rural cycle. And it's just an absolutely great sort of hippie blissed out sound with the Capaldi and Winwood's vocals, um, and the verses, the acoustic guitars, the light percussion behind it, and Chris Wood's flute just makes it sort of float over everything, and it's absolutely amazing. It's such a pivotal song. And I really think as well that this album, what's great about it is that these stateside influences, the American influence that's obviously so big on musicians of this era, of the Winwoods, Claptons, all of these people, British, American jazz, blues, R&B, all of this is fused with this sort of folk tradition, this English countryside feel, and with it, as I say, I think it produces Traffic's best work, and it's encapsulated in the great sleeve, the bushel of barleycorn, or the barley over the background of the ochre burlap. It's just absolutely perfect. And then there's a great inside photo. It's like a psychedelic tinge photo of the three members out in out in the countryside. And I don't have my copy with me; it's in storage at the moment. But I really think it's one of the great British records. It really works, and there's a longer term influence as well. So some 23 years after it was recorded, Paul Weller, after the Jam, was bringing back his solo career, and his second album, Wildwood, the really famous album, it's really pulls on Traffic. Somebody he makes it in Oxfordshire. It's got that those rural surroundings. Takes his friends to the countryside and make it. And I said that island sort of Traffic vibe is all over it as well. And then the following album, Stanley Road, Winwood would actually play on one of the tracks on that record, so bringing it full circle. And I also think that the British folk scene, there's a lot of younger people interested in that, and still continues to sort of thrive. John Barleycorn sort of inspires, regenerates itself in a way. So it's all here. It's all on the internet. You can find this. But I think this is, as I said, one of my favorite albums, one of the great British albums. So John Barleycorn Must Die, which is, as I said, coming up to its 56th anniversary of its release at the end of this month. So happy birthday, John Barleycorn. Anyway, thanks for watching this video. There'll be a lot more to come soon, and I'll see you then. Thank you very much.